Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'm Kevin Breitner with the Cressy team of Remax Real Estate Center. If you're not familiar with Cressy, it stands for Complete Real Estate Solutions and Investments. Simply put, we're here to help you with everything that you need to do in real estate. We specialize in pre-construction and investments. Joining us today to talk about financing, lending, and the mortgage side of things is Dion Mahadeo, RBC Specialist. You want to say hi?
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Excellent. Dion Mahadeo and I have been working together for 8 years now. A great wealth of knowledge in the mortgage side, and happy to have him here today. And thank you so much for joining us. So what we're doing today is we're going to talk about our 8-step process that we work with our new investor clients on how to purchase their first investment property, Lots of things to figure out when you're doing your first time, similar to putting in anything you're doing for the first time. It's hard to get started. You don't really know which way to go, what to do, or how to begin simply. So the analogy that I tell people, I'm going to share with you right now, it's simply being picked up and put in a big black room and being told to go turn on the light. That definitely would scare some people, make them nervous, unsure what to do or how to do, so they don't know where to begin. If you're put in that same situation and now someone comes over a loudspeaker saying, hey, take 10 steps forward, turn 90 degrees to your left, now take 15 steps forward, and the light switch is going to be right there at eye level. Now you have step-by-step instructions to do something that you didn't know how to do, and now removes all fear of the unknown, and you now can go forward and take those first 10 steps forward before turning left and eventually getting to your light switch. So that's what we're here to do today. One of the things that we pride ourselves on with the Cressy team is education, talking to people a lot about what they're going to need to know, and more specifically, who they are and what makes sense for them as an investor. As investors, we are as individual as our fingerprints. So one thing that we do is we work out our investor blueprint with everybody. So step one is financing. Step one is always financing, whether you're buying a property for yourself to move into, an investment property, or anything at all. We need to know what we can afford before we even start the search, what we can afford, what we're going to need to do, what it's going to cost us. That way, if we can only afford X, we're not even bothering looking at Y or Z. There's lots of ways to come up with cash. You can have the cash already saved. You can have equity in your house. You can borrow money from a partner. There's other ways as well. So why don't we get Dion right now to talk a little bit about the lending side of things and how we can get some money for you to get started investing.
Sure, well, absolutely. So yes, as Kevin said, the financing is definitely the first piece in terms of figuring out, in terms of buying your investment property, your first one. And so some things that, without getting too much into the weeds, but some things that you definitely need to know and take note of when looking to purchase is some of the similar things in terms of buying your primary residence, but there are a few differences. So when buying an investment property, first thing to know definitely in terms of down payment is you need 20% down payment to purchase an investment property. Whether it's classified as investment or second home, definitely need that 20% when buying that investment property. So, in terms of, as Kevin mentioned, you could have that in savings. You can leverage the equity in your primary residence. Is usually the two major ways to do it. I mean, some down the line as well. Once you have other properties, and you could leverage that as well. But in terms of the topic of first time, definitely either going to be your own savings or leveraging the equity in your home. So first thing to know, 20% down payment. In terms of looking and qualifying and seeing what we can afford to do, whenever you're buying an investment property, applying for the mortgage for that, you're obviously going to have to look at your credit situation, make sure that's good. So that is very similar to, buying a primary residence, is that you're looking for at least a credit score of at least 680 or higher. Make sure that everything is, repaid on time. There's no issues there. The score is a good indicator. So you want to make sure you're in that range at least. And so a lot of banks, RBC included, when you log into online banking, you now check your credit score for free. Doesn't affect your score. You get a soft credit check and know your score and your details. So you got to figure that out right now, and at least get that part out of the way. Now, in terms of affording the property, a couple things. So we do look at the personal income, what your personally that you do make. So we would look at salaried income, self-employed income. If you have any dividend income, investment income, all of those things can be considered in terms of qualifying for a investment property. And Some lenders have a little bit different rules in terms of qualifying. Just to speak very high level on RBC, this may be a benefit, I think, in terms of buying that investment property, is that when we look at a property, obviously you haven't had it rented because you don't own it yet. So what we do is we look at a market rent assessment for the property, the area. We have an appraiser give us that market rent assessment, and whatever that number comes up to, if it's $2,000, $3,000 a month, whatever that number is monthly, we're able to take 80% of that rental income and then apply it to the application and see if we can get everything to work to qualify. So your own personal incomes as well as the rental income. Same general affordability ratios hold in terms of buying a primary investment. We really want to make sure that your total debts, so that would be your current mortgage payment, the refinance mortgage payment we just talked about doing, the new mortgage on this new investment property, your car payments, any other debts you may have monthly. We divide that by your income. We should be around 40%. Now, most lenders will also kind of take a more conservative view on this. So we do add in some other expenses that are not necessarily real, but they might be things like bad debt expense and maintenance costs into a rental property. So we factor all those things in. That's where I come in to really crunch the numbers for you, figure that out, and say, what does this look like? Can we make this work? So once we got your total debt servicing around 40%, then that's going to tell us how much of a mortgage we can do on this investment property. Couple things to note in terms of policy. I know this is the first one, but just so you know, as you're planning forward, most lenders, again, are going to be in the ballpark with this. And so at RBC, we have a policy that in terms of residentially speaking, your max property residential holding limit is 9 properties. So 5 investment, 4 other. So 5 total investment properties. The 4 other would be, your primary residence, second home, vacation home, cottage. Maybe you helped out a sibling or your kids on purchasing a property. So that would count as well. So 4 other properties and 5 investment properties. So without getting too technical, that's high level what we need to look at in terms of qualifying for a first investment in terms of the financing side of things.
Excellent. Thanks there, Dion. What we're going to do now, I'm going to flip over. I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to show a little video that's going to explain a little bit about leverage, as Dion did touch on leveraging a little bit there. So let's talk about leveraging your primary residence and using some equity. Here we go. One of the things clients have said to me is, my house is now worth X. And it's like, great. It's awesome that equity is in there. But it's like a bank account. Let's do it something. And just sitting there and saving, we can actually take it out, leverage, and do something better with it. So it really comes down to being smart with your money and leveraging it and knowing what we can do to take advantage of it the most we can, hence leveraging it. Excuse me. So that brings us to what we're going to do with step two. Step two is all talking about strategies. What strategy is going to be put in place for you? What makes sense for you? This is where, we're drilling down and figuring out what you, the investor, is specific and important to you. So we're going to ask about long-term, short-term stuff. How long do you want your money tied up for? Are you wanting to get your hands dirty? Do you want to keep your hands clean? How hands-off do you want to be? Some people want to be completely. We can get a property manager. We can do pre-construction. This is where we really start figuring out all the different types of investment strategies and then gearing what's going to make sense for you, right? When we're talking different ways, when we're thinking about, again, long or short, so pre-construction, we can get in and we can get out very quickly, and all we're doing there is making appreciation. You have student rentals. There's buy and holds, which are both long-term. Flip, that's a short-term. There's different pros and cons to that as well, and we can get into that later. Duplex, the creation of a duplex. So buying an old bungalow and renovating it so that now it is a legalized duplex, creating that, which is great. Multifamily is another good one that we discussed, whether it's small or large. A small being, something under 6 units, large obviously being everything over. There's different ways that financing happens with that, and we'll get Dion to talk about that in a second again as well. There are lots of different ways that we can invest your money. Again, there's commercial. There's different ways that we can go down that. So it's really talking to you, figuring out what's going to make sense to you. Like I said before, we're as individual as our thumbprints, right? So that's why we need to make up your investor blueprint. So it's really figuring out exactly what you're looking for, how much money you have with step one, and step two now is what we're trying to do. And that'll eventually get us to step three. But while we're still on step two, I'm going to bring Dion back to talk about some differences on lending, specifically with pre-construction and renovation projects, as well as multifamily. Dion?
Yeah, so definitely to touch on step two here. So in terms of different property types for investment, as Kevin mentioned, there are a ton of options out there. I'm a residential mortgage specialist, so I can help you with everything on the residential piece. There are some things that some banks consider to be residential and some they do not. In terms of RBC's policy right now, and has been for a long time, a couple of features and benefits. So one feature and benefit from RBC is we're able to do up to a 6-door investment property that's residential as residential. So some lenders will, stop at 5, and after the 5th door on the property, it's deemed to be commercial. So when you're looking at commercial, that comes with a higher down payment, higher rates. A lot of other criteria within getting approved for that. So benefit RBC, we do up to six plexes as residential, which is fantastic. In terms of maybe a negative side, unfortunately, that we wouldn't cover, and I mean some lenders might do it, is the commercial type of property where you have a storefront or a restaurant on the ground level, and then there's an apartment above. Something like that we deem to be commercial, and so it's not something that I can do in the residential space. So again, that might come with a larger down payment and higher rates, but it's just a risk sort of tolerance from RBC in terms of what they deem to be appropriate for residential or not. So definitely on the 6-plex, it's a positive. Unfortunately, on that sort of commercial, it's definitely into the commercial with that type of arrangement, and that's something that I would have my colleagues that I work with in the commercial side to look at financing. In terms of other property types, something like a student rental is something that we're not really looking at right now, and so back to the example of leveraging the equity in your home. Example in the video just now was more of an example around just getting the 20% that you need to buy, and then we look at financing the investment property. In this case, you may want to, depending on the equity in your home, try to get more out of there. So let's say a student property, in a university town, a condo might be like $400,000. You may look to, refinance the whole $400,000 out of your primary residence and then just basically buy it in full and not have a mortgage on there, just because sometimes things like a student rental may not be something that we would lend on. definitely, there's tons of other property types. And as Kevin was saying, we want to look at pre-construction as well. And that's something that as a strategy could be very, fruitful as we go along, because there could be a multi-pronged strategy where you might be looking to buy a resale now, and depending on how much equity we can get out of the property, maybe use some of those funds to then put as a deposit on a pre-construction. And so pre-construction is obviously a longer term hold from when you buy it from the builder on the blueprint and then till it's built. So it might take a few years. And so as well, RBC on the financing side, when it comes to pre-construction, is really fantastic in terms of being able to guarantee something called a firm approval, where we can guarantee that approval for however long it takes to let pre-construction properties completed. Namely the longer ones are the condo situation. We'll be able to finance that, get you a firm approval ahead of time, and then we may have to just wait on something like confirming the rest of the down payment. But if we can give you a firm approval now, everything is done ahead of time. You have a question there, Kevin?
I was just going to say, just a quick example there was about multifamily, where you were saying a sixplex with yourself versus a fiveplex with somebody else, and the difference there. So let's just say, for example, if we're buying a sixplex for $600,000, just for simple math, it'll probably be, let's call it whatever, $600,000. And we have to put down 40% with somebody else. And with RBC, would only be a 20% difference. That's half of the deposit. So it makes a big difference there with being able to afford that extra door versus a 5 door or 6, or being able to leverage that funds. If you had the 40% to do it with somebody else, we can now put it through with RBC and use that 20% somewhere else as well in another investment property. So I think that's a big one there. That's definitely a separator in my eyes from RBC to the rest of the lenders. Just that 6-unit versus a 5-unit door can save you thousands of dollars. Excellent.
After the question here, we have a question coming in from Katie, and this one's directed at Dion. She's asking about Airbnb or vacation properties, and she's thinking of buying one in Collingwood. How would that work?
Oh, okay. Great question. So in terms of a property where it's like a vacation property, especially in places like Collingwood, you have a couple different types. You're going to have a condo scenario or a house scenario where, you're going to buy the property, you're going to own it. And so that would be a standard financing situation. But there's other properties up in Collingwood that are part of what's called a rental pool. So you own this vacation property, you're allowed to, use it for certain times of the year. The rest of the times of the year, it's up for rent, so that they can book, hotel spots for vacations, things like that. Unfortunately, from a big bank perspective, most of the big banks, it's not something that they're going to lend on for something like that in Collingwood, to do that sort of either Airbnb or vacation pool, rental pool. So that would be, again, something like the student residence that I was talking about, where you may want to look to purchase that in full from leveraging the equity in your home to purchase that. And if that's not something you want to entertain, or maybe there's not enough equity in that property that you currently own, then we may want to look at not a rental pool property in Collingwood, but rather, a condo that's fully, your own, that you would own, and does not have a rental pool component in it. So definitely something to consider when you're thinking about that, because it does come with a little bit more risk. And so the banks aren't willing to really necessarily look at those. You may want to have to purchase those in full. But that, and that's where you kind of see the price difference on those types of properties, where, the property that has a rental pool is going to be a little bit more affordable. And then the one that's just a, complete condo on your own, that you own it, it's going to be a lot more money because of that reason. So, but great question, Katie. That's definitely how we would look at that.
Yeah, Katie, thanks so much for the question. And Dion, great answer. That's basically where it is. So we're going to move on now to step 3. Step 3 is simply where we get to after step 1 and step 2, right? So basically, again, step 1 was financing, what we can afford, where we can afford, and trying to figure that out. Step 2, strategy, what we want to do, what makes sense to us, what type of asset we want to get involved in. Then we're going to get on to step 3. Now, this is exactly what step 1 and 2 tells us, where we can do what we want to do, simply put. So where our dollar will allow us to do what we want to do, because the financing is one thing we cannot change. We can buy in different markets if that's going to allow us to do different things. One question I always get asked, is about buying in Toronto. Is it still worth it? When is the bubble going to burst? You know, how can this Toronto condo market still be going at the rate that it's going? And my answer to is simply going to be this. And we did a study a couple of years ago. Well, really, Toronto is still a very cheap international city compared to the rest of the world, as Canada is such a new country compared to the rest of the world. So to get back to that study that I was telling you about, we did it a couple of years ago. So it's a little bit outdated, but it's still very, very relevant. If we gave you $1,350,000, this is in 2017, to go buy a condo in the world, where could you buy a condo, or what size condo, could you buy square footage wise for that $1,350,000 Canadian dollars? Simply put, the two smallest units that you could buy would be in Manhattan, New York at 420 square feet. And then in London, England at 440 square feet. So you're getting 440 square feet for that $1,350,000 Canadian dollars. Now, at that same time, I'm not going to list all the cities that are in between, but I will give you the two largest as well. The square footage on Beijing, Dubai, Tokyo, Los Angeles, Monaco, you name it, they're all in there in between. The two largest, again, this is in 2017, for the $1,350,000 Canadian, was Miami at 918 square feet. And lastly, we have our largest, Toronto, at 1,325 square feet. That is 3 times larger than Manhattan. We are known as a cleaner, nicer New York City here in Toronto. So that just explains to where our real estate is going to get to one day. We have a long way to go. So I don't ever see this bubble breaking. Toronto is an international city compared to them and looked at in the rest of the world. And again, we're nowhere near New York or the rest. We're still very, very cheap in comparison. That's why the pricing is going up. That's why the pricing is going up all around Toronto as well, because as people move out, their dollar goes further and it just pushes a ripple effect, whether you're going west, north, or east. South is a little bit tough to live in the lake. But anyway, you leave, Toronto prices are going up because of this, and Toronto is just going to continue to rise. So Toronto is definitely still a good market to invest in. That being said, does it make the most amount of sense for you? If we were going to buy an $800,000 townhouse, for example, in Toronto, does that make sense for you? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that same money, the deposit money, could be invested maybe in 2 other properties or 1 other property, and then maybe a deposit towards a pre-construction unit or something like that. So again, we're getting back to leverage, how we can leverage your money to do the best it can in the way you feel the most comfortable. Again, lots of little cities around Ontario that are great to invest in, that are more affordable than Toronto. And really it's about where you feel comfortable and what your dollar can do there.
We have a question.
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, this question comes from David, and he's wondering, what is the best city to purchase an investment property at this given time?
Okay, great question, David. And I'll say that's a loaded question. I don't really have the best city for you to buy an investment property in. One of my mentors always said, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. And that's also the same for real estate. So really it's about getting in as soon as you can and starting your money to work for you over time. Real estate is not a get rich quick. It is a get wealthy slow. So it's about getting started. So I guess it depends on your specific criteria, where we can get your dollar going and what we can do for you. But there's lots of great cities. You know, the Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo area is really up and coming. Windsor is still affordable and up and coming as well. You can go down to Niagara, same thing. That list goes on. Barrie, Oshawa, East End, like we can go to lots of different places. Cressy, our team, do we service every area in Ontario? No, that would be crazy. But what we do is we work with RE/MAX agents that understand investing all over Ontario and all over Canada, really. We also have a great contact in Calgary for condos right now, but that's a conversation for another day as well. So that takes us through step 3. we're now going to get into step 4, which is, again, breaking down more about the criteria, what our plan is, what we're looking for. Are you looking for a rental that's in a family neighborhood so that we are close to schools or highway access? Are you looking for a student rental? So that obviously has to be close to university or college. Are you thinking about young professionals? So now we're looking at a 1-bedroom or 1-bedroom and den, a couple. There's lots of different things that we can get into as we're narrowing it down. Do you want to do any work? Do you want to buy something that we have to renovate and force some appreciation to make you some extra money equity-wise right away? And again, it's about narrowing it down and being specific to you and what you want to do and creating your plan, your blueprint, right? We're all as individual as our fingerprints. So that's why we have to make up your blueprint. That's step 4. We're getting ready. We're finalizing everything and we're getting close to having all the fun now, right? Step 5, this is where you want to assemble your team. It's very, very important to have people that you trust working with, that you know are educated in this and are going to help guide, advise, and consult you so that you're making an educated decision, whatever that decision may be that's best for you. It's an educated one. Again, CRESI stands for Complete Real Estate Solutions and Investments. So our team of professionals, we've worked with them for years. They've helped many of our clients do whatever it is that needs to be done. And again, to reiterate, it goes back to whatever strategy that we're putting in place here, because whatever strategy we're going to do is going to need a different team of professionals, right? You might need a handyman to just do little touch-ups here and there, or you might go as big as an architect if you're doing something like a major renovation or flip where you're adding on a level or something like that, paint, tile, the list goes on and on of people that we work with that we will happily and confidently refer to you to make sure that you're getting what it is that you need for your project, your investment property. Lastly, now, step 6. This is the last one we're going to discuss today, but it simply is getting started. Now that we have everything in place, all of our ducks are in a row, and now we can start searching and finding out what's going to make sense to you, viewing a property or pre-construction, floor plans, again, whatever strategy we're going to, and then eventually selecting one, putting an offer in, and purchasing your first investment property. Well, the other steps are obviously step 7 and step 8, the final 2. Step 7 is acquiring a tenant. That conversation is definitely a long, different one that we're going to break down in another video for you. And then step 8, you're now a landlord. Now what do you do? We need you to make sure you're doing things properly, more importantly, legally when dealing with a tenant, no matter what can come your way. And again, our team of professionals can help guide you professionally and legally that way as well. So I want to take a second to thank Dion again for joining us today with RBC. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you very much. And happy to help anyone that's listening that needs a little bit more personalized one-on-one advice. The next step after, well, it is step 1, but, to get started would be that, pre-approval, start that pre-planning and or possibly refinancing the primary residence that you have to get going as well. So any questions along those lines, I know Kevin will provide at the end of the video our information, phone number, email. Feel free to reach out. Happy to help and get you going on your first your journey as a first-time real estate investor.
Excellent. Yes, and everything will be there at the end, names, phone numbers, and emails for Dion or our team so that we can help you get started. Thank you so much for watching and for your time today, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Bye for now.